Hi, my name is Buddhima and this is Maddie and Ava. Today we have with us a very special guest. Please welcome acclaimed 9 News weather presenter Jessica Braithwaite.
Hello. Oh, thanks for having me, guys. This is great.
It's so nice to finally have you here. How are you enjoying our school so far?
I love your school. From the moment I pulled up and I saw you three beautiful girls out the front ready to meet me, and then you took me through and I sort of saw a few things and I just thought, wow, this place has a great vibe. The classrooms look fun. The reception area, I have a little boy who is just started reception this year, and I looked at that and I thought he would love that. They look like they've got a really cool indoor-outdoor thing going on. So I'm a fan. I've only been here a little while, but I love it. You guys are really lucky to be able to come here.
As students in our school ministries, we are always interested in leadership qualities and which pathways lead to different careers. What led you to your career path and your job now as a weather presenter for Channel 9?
You know, I've been thinking about this a bit lately, actually, about, life and how we end up where we end up. I think, when you get to year 12 and you pick, if you want to go to uni, you can pick sort of what courses you might be interested in. And I remember that I've always loved writing, always loved reading and writing. Like when I was your age, I would be in bed at night and Mum would have said, it's time to go to bed, turn the light out, you have to go to sleep. And I would get a torch from the cupboard and hide under my doona with a torch so that I could keep reading. Like I just loved reading, loved writing. And so I'd always sort of thought that journalism could be a good option because I could write for a living. So my first preference at choosing a uni course was journalism. And my second preference was environmental management because I've also always been really interested in our environment and the world around us and the weather and our climate. And I think it's interesting when I look back now that I've ended up, I went down the journalism path and I studied that, but I've ended up also incorporating that second interest in becoming more specific and ended up also studying meteorology and combining that into ultimately, be the weather presenter. And so now I've kind of got both of my interests all wrapped into one, which is a really nice place to be.
What primary and high school did you attend and what subjects did you enjoy the most?
So I'm from Mount Gambier. So I went to school at St. Paul's, which was a little primary school in Mount Gambier. And what subjects did I like there? I'm just trying to think of, I loved the storytelling, when the teachers would read stories. I loved that. So I suppose you would call that English. Yeah, because I loved that, stories and reading and writing. And I loved sports. I loved the PE. Do you call it PE still?
Yeah.
PE. I loved playing sport. They're probably the two. And then as I got older, I started to I really was interested in geography. Do you guys, that's more of a high school subject, isn't it? You don't do geography.
We do something like HAS.
Yeah? Is that like a science-based kind of a thing?
It's like sort of like different things. Like it goes into geography, history.
Yeah. I really like geography. I would recommend that. That's a good one when you get to high school, if that's even what they call it still. But I love learning about, because there's lots of nature elements in there in terms of how the natural world works. So that was probably that, and then English again were probably my favourite subjects at high school.
Did you enjoy going to school?
I enjoyed parts of going to school. I think I loved primary school. I think I thought that was a lot of fun. And then I think as you get older, and I don't know what age this starts to happen now, but you have to start to deal with other stuff at school that's not just your learning, because like the learning stuff is fun and the teachers are supportive and that's all great. Then you have to deal with things like bullying and social. And you guys have a whole nother element now, right? Because you've got wrapped in social media and that wasn't even around when I was at school. So you've got even more stuff flying around that you're trying to grapple with and learn and understand. To put it simply, I did get bullied a little bit at school in high school. And so sometimes that can taint your experience a little bit. But from the academic side of things, I always loved learning. But I really admire you guys coming through now because it's a there's a lot that you've got to deal with, isn't there, as you're growing up and navigating this crazy new world.
Was there a significant adult or teacher who mentored you along the way?
Yeah. Funnily enough, now that I think about it, my geography, maybe that's why I liked geography so much. My geography teacher was really cool. She was fun and she made it fun. And she was one of those, when I talk about, because you do have all that weird social stuff that you have to navigate at school. But I felt like when I was in geography class, all that went out the window, none of that mattered. And you could just focus on what you were doing. So I really, she was cool. And then there was in year 2, we had a teacher. I don't think they're allowed to do this anymore, but she had like a giant jar of jelly beans in the classroom. So I always liked her, my teacher in year 2, because she would sort of give out jelly beans for people who were doing the right thing. Yeah, but I don't think that's allowed anymore. You should suggest that to your teachers and see what they think.
Working on live TV must be challenging at times. What are some strategies that you use when things are not going the way that you planned?
Yes, all the time. That happens all the time. It never goes to plan. What do I do? I think I've developed a skill to just roll with whatever's going on. Like last night, I was actually on air and someone drove past in the middle of my report and yelled out it actually really scared me because it was just a man really yelling at me as I was on air, and he drove past and it made me jump. I was like, oh, and I sort of just have like one part of my brain that's like, oh my God, there's a man yelling at me while I'm on air. And then another part of my brain that's like, okay, just keep going, read the numbers. It's got to focus on. So I think it's just developing that ability to adapt to whatever's going on at the time, and try to not be too, I don't know, try to keep you cool a little bit. I guess you sort of learn, but that comes with practice.
So you obviously work in front of a green screen, but how do you know where each state or area is located while broadcasting? Yeah,
so we actually, at the moment at Channel 9, we actually have, it's not a green screen, it's a big LED, sort of a plasma screen, but it's similar to a green screen in the sense that I can't see it when we're going to air. So the numbers are behind me, and even though it might look like I'm pointing to the maps, I can't actually see them because they're behind me. So what I have is another monitor that is in front of me, so it would be here, which shows me what's happening behind me. Does that make sense?
Oh, so it kind of like mirrors it.
That's right, yep. So I can see, when I make a movement, I can see that on the other camera, and that then sort of reflects back to me what I'm doing. So I'm kind of using that as my guide, so I know where to point. And there's places that are harder to point to than others because you sort of don't want to cover the maps, and there's a bit of an art to it. But after a while, you do sort of you get into a bit of a flow.
What are your working hours, and do you write your own script for the auto cue?
I do write my own scripts. I actually don't use an auto cue because I prefer to just kind of speak naturally to my audience as though I would if I was just having a conversation with you. I find sometimes if I'm reading something, it's a little bit more stilted and it doesn't give me that ability to adapt to what's happening on the scene. Whereas if I just kind of just speak to you, then I can say, oh, we're here and this has just happened, and, just sort of be more in the moment with it. But I do write my scripts. So I come in the morning, I talk to the Weather Bureau, and then I look at the charts. So we have a series of different synoptic and satellite charts and things like that. I'll have a look and see, right, what did the weather do overnight? Gather all my information. What's the radar doing? The radar shows, where the rain has been coming through, what's on the forecast. Get all my information together. Because I've studied meteorology, I sort of have a bit of a feel for what's what. And then, I'll put it all into my script. And then, so I've got an idea of what I want to say. And then if I'm in studio, even though I've written a script for myself in my mind, because I know I've got an idea of what I want to say, then I'll go on studio and I won't use a script at all. So if you see me in the studio at Channel 9 and the report goes for whatever it is, 2.5 minutes, I'm just winging it. I'm not reading an auto cue there. I'm just sort of saying whatever comes out.
Do you ever get nervous?
Yes. I get more nervous probably if there's something really big happening. So like if there's a bushfire, I really want to get it right. I really want to make sure I'm giving people the most relevant and up-to-date information so that I sort of, think about that. Or if I'm doing something a bit different to usual, and that might not even be something too serious. Like sometimes we do these wacky things with the fringe. I remember one year I was up on a trapeze flying around doing it, so like, because we have fun, we go to community events, we do all sorts of different things. And I remember being a bit nervous about that one because it was quite high up. I do. It's challenging sometimes.
What are you doing personally during the broadcast when you're off air?
Great question. So at the moment we have a 4 o'clock bulletin and a 6 o'clock bulletin. So the 4 o'clock bulletin is an interesting one because the daily forecast comes out at about 20 past 4 each day. So I only really have a very short amount of time to look at the forecast and then do my weather report in the 4 o'clock bulletin. So then in between those two bulletins, I'm taking a much more detailed look to see what's happening. So I'll go back to, if it's nice weather, I might sit outside or I might be in my car, have a look at what's changed since I was on air at 4 to make sure that when I go to air at 6 o'clock, I'm giving the most up-to-date numbers because the temperatures often change in that time window. So sort of updating everything, checking the maps, checking the graphics, and then doing it all again at 6 o'clock.
What do you talk about during the ad breaks, and is there anyone on set particularly that makes you laugh?
Yeah, that's a great question. So during the ad breaks, there's a lot of things going on, like I'll have an earpiece that people talk to me in my ear, and they'll say things like, okay, you're on air in 3 minutes to go or 2 minutes to go, or they'll say to the cameraman, can you just adjust the shot a little bit? Can you zoom out a little bit? Can you pan to the left? Can you pan to the right? There's lots of chatter going on in the breaks where they're sort of setting everything up and making everything flow. So a lot of the chatter in between work is kind of like logistical stuff, or speaking to the cameraman, making sure if you got that shot in the background, or just kind of working out what we're going to do. The cameramen do make me laugh. They are always there to capture a funny moment or things like that. And do you know someone who really makes me laugh if you watch the news is our newsreader, Brenton Raglis. He's very, very funny. Like if you ever get to spend some time with him, he makes, obviously not when we're on air doing the news, but in the newsroom, he makes really funny sound effects, and he's just a really funny person, and he's a great person to have around. Yeah.
What current world issue has the biggest impact on how you view the future?
Climate change. Being a weather presenter, that's obviously a big one for me. And it's all about, it's not just about the future, it's about now as well, obviously, because we're feeling the impacts of our changing climate every day. I think about it a lot. I look at the data, in my role, no one can avoid it, but in particular as a weather presenter, looking at the changing conditions and the way that things are progressing so quickly and how unpredictable things have become. Yeah, it's definitely a big challenge, and there are some amazing people doing amazing things in that space that's really inspiring. So I always try to focus on that side of it, on the inspiring, looking for the light, because otherwise it can get a bit scary.
What was your most interesting interview you have ever done, and is it true that you spoke to Taylor from Hanson, who was your childhood idol?
Yeah. I had posters of Taylor from Hanson on my bedroom wall as a girl. How old are you girls?
11.
You're 11. So this is when I was probably about 12, 13. I was just obsessed with Taylor Hanson. I thought I was going to marry him, and everyone in my, all the girls in my class at school were all obsessed with Hanson. Is there an equivalent now? Is there like a band that you guys are all into?
I don't really think there's like a specific band, but there are certain people that we'll watch on YouTube
or TikTok.
Yeah, TikTok. Yeah. See, none of that was around. We just had we had magazines. Do you still buy magazines?
Not
Nah,
really.
you don't.
We just get them in like the mail and then you just
Do
like read
you?
through them.
Yeah, see, we would have these sort of like, their one was called TV Hits, and it had all the different like, yeah, it's funny thinking back how old that makes me sound. But anyway, yes, I was a big Taylor Hanson fan, and then at one point in my career I was the entertainment reporter at Channel 10, and so I would interview the different performers as they were coming to town, all the different celebrities, and it was great. I got to interview and meet some really amazing people, well, you know, international celebrities, but yeah, Taylor Hanson was a huge, well, all of them. Yeah, I remember we went and filmed them arriving at the airport, and I got to sit down with them, Zach, Isaac and Taylor, and I interviewed them, and they were lovely, which is really great because you don't want to have this sort of like, you don't want to idolize someone for such a long time and then meet them and realize that they're actually really rude or really mean or whatever it is. So it was really nice to see that they were actually really nice guys. So I'm still a fan.
We listened to some of your music the other day and this song really stood out to us.
We don't have to feel this way, feel this way. We don't have to, we don't have to. We all wanna chase that way, but we don't have to. No, we don't have to.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
How did you get into music and who was your inspiration?
So I got into music when I was older, actually. I taught myself to play the guitar when I was a teenager, like 15, 16 years old. So it wasn't this sort of, I know a lot of people learn when they're a bit younger than that. My boyfriend at the time bought me a guitar, and I just sort of started tinkering away at it. And I started sort of, my younger brother was getting into music at around the same time. So we would sit around at home and we would literally like print out a chord chart. I don't know if any of you are musical, but a chord chart, the different chords that you can make on the guitar. And we'd sort of just draw a circle around the chords that we liked the sound of, and started to realize, oh, if we put these chords together, we can start to make songs. And so it was really fun. Like, I loved that. And then the bands and the musicians that inspired me around that time, I don't know if you guys would probably be familiar with them, but there's an artist called Michael Franti and another Australian band called the Cat Empire, and another really great Australian singer-songwriter called Xavier Rudd. They were all sort of, I don't know, they just, yeah. And then do you guys know Missy Higgins? She's a really great female singer-songwriter. I sort of think I take inspiration from those artists, yeah.
Are you a Swiftie?
Of course. Are you guys?
Yep.
Oh, she's
you-
just brilliant.
Do you have a favourite Taylor Swift album?
So I'm an old school, like I do love her new music as well, but I just I don't know, I love her old country, like, you know, like Love Story, like what's that album called?
Fearless, I think.
Right. Like I'm a total old school, loved her country pop, love her music now, but I do like country music, so I probably like her old stuff better than her new stuff, which again makes me sound really old, but there we are.
Can you tell us the meaning behind your song?
Yeah, so to feel this way, it's, you know, it comes a little bit back to what we were talking about before with social media, but it's just this idea that everyone's kind of putting this image of themselves out online, pretending that they live these perfect lives, or that, you know, that what you see sort of someone on Instagram or TikTok, probably more so for you guys. TikTok's, I don't know, TikTok feels a bit more, TikTok's different to Instagram. This song was more written about people who are kind of projecting this perfect life, and it kind of makes me feel like I'm not enough, or I'm not good enough, or I'm not fitting in because I don't have X, Y, or Z, or I don't look like how they look, or I don't have a perfect clean kitchen. When, you know, my house is messy, right? And everyone on Instagram has these beautiful, clean, pristine houses. And I'm like, so the line, you know, we don't have to feel this way, is kind of sort of pushing back against that. Like, we don't have to feel that, like, we're not enough, or we don't have to feel like we have to keep improving ourselves in order to match this standard that is set online that doesn't really exist because it's fake.
What is your advice on dealing with negativity in the media?
I'm not going to pretend that I'm perfect at this because it is a challenge. I try to remind myself that the people who make really mean comments are not, like, I try not to think that they're not like the most important people in my life. Do you know what I mean? So like if someone whose opinion I really valued, someone who I really respect came to me and had a criticism, then I would take that on board. But if it's someone who I don't even know, who just gets a kick out of writing mean things to people on the internet, then I try to just put that in the box where it belongs, which is like I don't really need to take that on. And that's easier said than done. Like if I'm 100% honest, I'd love to be able to sit here and tell you, no, I don't care what people say about me. I just, forget about it and move on, because that's not true. Like it does. You ask anyone, it's very hard to sort of just compartmentalize that kind of thing and not let it affect you. But that's what I sort of try to like logically talk myself out of it.
What's it like to do in your spare time, and how do you try and maintain a healthy work-life balance?
Oh my goodness, I try to maintain a healthy work-life balance. I haven't figured out the magic recipe for that yet. I have 2 young kids, so I've got a 5-year-old and a 3-year-old. I love hanging out with them in my spare time. I work Monday to Thursday, so I have Fridays and the weekends off. So I love just really like being around the house with them, where I'm getting into gardening now. I'm really just like cottoned on to gardening and how fun it is. So in my spare time, probably my favourite thing to do would just be at home in the garden with the kids, like planting something or collecting some seeds, or just that. It's really kind of not really a big deal. Like not going anywhere, but just to be home, just that simplicity, of slowing down, having a look at the leaves, looking at the flowers, looking to see what's bloomed, and that kind of thing. Yeah.
Is there any final advice about learning you would want to give young people in the primary education today?
Advice about learning. Yeah. I'm thinking about this because it seems like a profound question, and I want to like give some advice that's actually meaningful. I would say never lose your curiosity, that idea of being able to ask questions, why or how could I do this, or why is this happening, or why have you thought about looking at it this way instead of that way? Like that ability to question, I think, is really important, because if you're at school and you spend a lot of time being told what to do and not what to think, but what's what. I think it's important to maintain an ability to actually question and maintain your own little personal vibe for learning, Yeah.
And finally, we have some images here from social media that we would like you to provide context for.
Okay. Oh, gosh. Guys, you've had a good look at my backstory. So this is a photo of me dressed as a clown, doing a live cross. I'm pretty sure this was Halloween. I think this was Halloween, and we were doing a segment about trick-or-treating, and I did a live report from one of the streets of Adelaide dressed as a clown, and I believe that we worked with some kids as well who were all dressed up in their costumes, and one of them started crying right before we went to air with about 5 seconds to go, so they had to kind of scoot out of the cross so that they could keep crying. I turn the page? Yeah. My goodness. Oh, wow. These memories. Okay, so this is a photo taken in Africa. This is on the border of South Africa and Zimbabwe in a kind of a pretty remote region called the Limpopo district of South Africa, which is where I went to volunteer as a music teacher in a care centre there. And so I lived in South Africa, and these are the kids that we're sitting with. Wow, this is, oh gosh, I'm just looking at their faces. I haven't looked at these photos in a while, and it's funny because the joy that we were able to experience through music together, it's making me feel quite emotional. It's a really special time. Yeah. Wow. Oh, yes. Hanson. The 13-year-old girl inside of me is very excited. I just interviewed Hanson. Yeah, I think that must have been at the time where I'd also started writing my own music as well. So the newspapers were writing articles about me. And then I was so excited that I had, interviewed these other musicians. So it came out to be a bit of a fun story. An image for... Oh, yes, this is me wearing some very fashionable wading pants. So this is when we were filming for Totally Wild. Do you still have that show, Totally Wild? It's a kids' TV show, and it's all about getting out into nature and learning about different animals and science and things like that. I'm not sure if it's still around, but back then I was doing some reporting for Totally Wild, and I think we waded out into the middle of I think it was like a swamp or something. I think we were looking for frogs. I can't actually remember exactly what we were filming there, but it's certainly a very fashionable moment that you've managed to capture there. Well done. That was a nice little trip through memory lane.
Thank
Golly
you so
gosh.
much for coming in today, Jessica. Do you mind staying around to do a weather report with us?
Absolutely. That sounds fantastic. And thank you for your very thoughtful questions.
PNC Podcast out.